Hello everyone, so it's Lobster. I'm here with another Worcester replay. At the moment it's probably my favorite ship to play. This one's my personal record for damage in a cruiser, as well as my personal record in the Worcester, obviously. So to start at this game, I chose this game partly because it's got a really big damage number, but also because it showcases the two different playstyles of the Worcester quite well. So at the beginning of this game, we're on Sleeping Giant. The Z-23 in front of me said he wants to go to A, so I decided I'd support him, seeing as I'm the only radar cruiser here. Unfortunately, that Isimo's not going to support us, and I'm not going to support him too closely, just because when you get too close in a ship like the Worcester, you definitely will get focused, and the Worcester doesn't take getting shot at very well, unless you're at mid-range. So the first half of this game is going to be open water, and then in the second half I'm going to show a little bit of island-based play. Not island humping, but using islands to block vision and block return fire. I strongly believe that island humping will significantly limit your firepower and also make you a sitting duck for battleships, and it also makes it hard to disengage. So the build I run for my Worcester is a pure combat focused build, which means I don't take AFT, I just take Concealment Expert and IFHE. For my tier 3 skills I pick up Demolition Expert on the second pass, Superintendent's the first pick obviously, and then at tier 2 I end up picking Jack of all trades because I have 2 points left over in the build. Modules wise, I run very standard cruiser ones, so main armaments, damage control, radar mod on that slot, AA range mod, rudder shift, concealment expert, or concealment mod, and then DPM for upgrade, because extra range on a ship with arcs this bad is kind of unnecessary. The only one that might sound unusual to people who are familiar with my builds would be the AA range mod, and while I probably wouldn't use it in something like Clan Wars or a place where there's guaranteed to be no carriers, it's actually quite useful in randoms just because with it your AA spotting distance is just as long as your AA range, which means if you get spotted by a spotter aircraft, you just pop that AA and it disappears. So as you can see, I start shooting pretty early. I'm engaging a Minotaur and a Destroyer at pretty long range, 13 to 14 kilometers. But as you can see, I'm heavily out-trading them because most of their shots are missing. Now a battleship is getting involved though, so I'm going to have to probably switch focus to the battleship now. And now you can see that there's 2 battleships on this flank, 2 tier 9s, Ismo and Musashi, as well as a Minotaur, and unspotted yet, but there will be arriving soon. There's also Cleveland. So we are heavily outgunned here, and the Z-23 is already dead. So at this point, I'm done with this flank. I'm just going to run away. But I'm going to fight the entire way to continue to do damage to slow the enemy down. I do pop hydro here because I'm concerned that the Z-23 might have moved out of the smoke quicker than I expected and got torps at me. But in this case, don't forget the Z-23's torp range is pretty short. It's about 10 kilometers, I believe. When playing the Worcester, I think one of the largest challenges for a lot of players is the arcs, because if you're not used to US cruisers, it's incredibly difficult to hit with these arcs. It just takes a huge amount of practice and getting used to them. If you can't make American arcs work though, you're gonna hate the light cruiser line. One of the main advantages of the light cruiser line though is that they have a fairly low citadel, and a lot of them have an odd placement where they don't have citadel under the turrets. That's not the case for the Worcester, but I believe it's the case for the Cleveland and the Helena, I think. And that allows them to actually play quite aggressively and get shot at without being punished as much as they should be. I'm spotted. That's the Minotaur, so I don't pop radar. Or Cleveland, so I don't pop radar. See as I'm spotted now, I do continue to fire at the Ismo for a little bit because I'm not being focused too heavily yet. But immediately switch back to the Minotaur because in general, cruisers will get wrecked by IFHE, and also because they have a lower hit point pool, your damage is much more significant when done to cruisers. Now I haven't taken too much focus fire, so I'm going to keep on shooting a bit. You'll notice here that I don't really focus on one target too heavily. I continue switching back and forth between the Izmo and the Musashi, partly because they're dropping in and out of detection, but also because at this stage of the game I'm pretty much just interested in farming some damage. So by setting multiple single fires, you're going to be able to farm a huge amount of damage early game. This is a sort of general thing I do with my light cruisers, is I like to set targets on fire in a single place and then just leave them. They tend to get frustrated and they put it out. At that point you switch back and focus them. But focusing a ship down until you force them to use DCP can be inefficient, unless it's a very important target. At this point I'm definitely getting focused, and the side shots from the Minotaur were actually getting quite annoying, so I do try to drop detection. As you can see though, I don't drop detection, which means I can just instantly pop radar, and there's the Z46. Now, at first I'm showing a lot of broadside to get shots at the Z46, but immediately I know that the battleship's going to shoot at me, so I start to turn to the outside. The turret traverse is so quick on the Worcester that turning like this is absolutely no problem. It's I think about an 8-second turret traverse, even with the DPM mod. Approximately. Unfortunately, it does get out of range, so I have to stop shooting now. So at this point in the replay, I kind of want you to notice that I'm very low on health already. I've taken a huge amount of focus fire, but I'm still alive, and I've done barely a quarter of the damage that I end up doing in the game. So that's just a sort of pointing out that you should never give up in these situations. Don't say, oh, I've lost a lot of health, I should just end it. Stay in the fight and look for opportunities.
All stations, protect that target.
So at this point, I'm basically trying to get into a more advantageous position. Like I said earlier, I think that the open water strategy is the best strategy, but it's very important to be flexible and be willing to use island cover when the situation deserves it, and particularly when you're fighting large numbers of battleships at fairly close range. You'll notice here I'm just harassing this Izmo, trying to get a single fire on him. I'm actually waiting for a radar to come off cooldown though, because I'm sure that Z46 is going to try to keep me spotted again. He's been very aggressive and frankly foolhardy, but I've still got 20 seconds until radar's off, so I'm going to stop shooting in a little bit and then use radar. I also partly stopped shooting here because I'm about to run to the St. Louis, and when you run into someone you're going to be slow and an easy target, so it's best to go to drop detection if possible. I do quickly try to communicate with the St. Louis that I'm about to pop radar, but I can see that his guns are pointed the wrong way, so that's fine. What happened there, you should remember to target your ship before you zoom in, otherwise it's pretty hard to pan around and find the target. The first hit on that Z46 is excellent, but I have a lot worse luck afterwards. So you'll notice when shooting at destroyers, particularly with American light cruisers, my favorite strategy is throw a huge amount of shit at the wall and hope that some of it sticks. You'll also notice I continue to fire even though he went unspotted, because one, I noticed that he seemed to have lost his engine and rudder, and two, I could use the indicator on the map to continue firing at his location.
I need help.
So now that the situation's... Now it's time to take a quick look at what the situation is. The Izmo that I was fighting for a while is falling back, because I guess he got annoyed with shooting at a dodging cruiser at max range. And you can recognize that the ships that went through A are about to be into B, which is a nice central location, very easy to farm. with lots of good island cover around it. You'll also notice that my team is just tied in ships and slightly ahead on points, so it's a good situation. But we're about to start losing B. So what I'm trying to find is an advantageous position where I can basically farm the battleships and cruisers that are going to go to B. You'll also notice here that I didn't fire at the Minotaur, whereas in the rest of the game you see me be pretty trigger happy with my Worcester. And the reason was because I assumed he was going to go and spot it very soon, and the range was very long, where hitting him would be pretty difficult. This Cleveland, though, is slightly lower health. Sorry, that was a recording bug. I don't know why that was happening. But this Cleveland's a little bit of an easier target because he's lower health at tier 8. So I quickly farm him a bit. But then when he goes undetected, I switch fire to the Musashi. And this sort of pre-firing your ideal farming target, in this case a tier 9 battleship, is partly just to get 1 or 2 fire sets so he'll be forced to DCP, and then when I get into my better position I'll be able to really farm him properly. You'll notice that I'm lifting my aiming point up a bit to try to get a view of the target behind the place I'm aiming. And now when he's respotted, I'm just going to fire based on the minimap mostly. You will also notice that the game's terrain hit indicator is saying I'm going to miss. That's not true. So don't trust it, just keep on shooting usually. It's there as a warning that you might hit the ground. And I'll, for example, use it when I'm firing with battleships sometimes, because you don't want to accidentally hit those shots into the ground. Now I move slightly forward and I get a beautiful angle on this Republique, where I've got double island cover to protect it. And it's quite short range for shooting at a battleship, so this is perfect. In general, when you're playing your American light cruisers and other HE spamming light cruisers in general, Republiques, any French battleship, any British battleship, those are ideal targets for your HE because they have huge amounts of 32mm armor. You'll notice I've got 33 penetrations and 4 non-pens on this guy. It's easy.
That's how it's done.
Some other battleships that tend to be good targets are Colorados, Nagatos, Amagis. Those are all pretty solid targets for IFHE. Here I pop a radar just to get that battleship or cruiser, spotted, so I can finish him off. He's only on 1,000 health, so I do fire 2 insurance shots just in case the first one missed. And then I immediately switch back to the Republique.
You destroyed an enemy cruiser.
For a pretty easy double strike. Here, the replay might be a little bit motion sickness inducing because of how quickly I'm zooming in and out, and also constantly moving my mouse up to get a better view of the target.
All stations reporting the position of a strategic target.
Quick witherer. Now here's a good example of why ammo choice is still important even in light cruisers. I'm about to go up against a Minotaur. At first I think he's going to go bow into me, but then he seems to start turning it outwards a bit, and I load AP. Or I assume he's going to turn outwards, because they always do. And that's pretty much the perfect spot. If I'd aimed a little bit farther back on that second sub, I might have been able to kill him, but unfortunately I don't. Now I load HE because he's bow in. Also, it's important to stay angled in these situations because Minotaur AP DPM is disgusting, and it can absolutely wreck you. Now there's an Iowa pushing it. You'll notice how in this last part of the game, I'm in a really good opportunity where it's just target followed by target followed by target. Basically, able to continually shoot. Yeah, I was still a little too angled for AP, but I'm going to switch pretty soon. Now that I'm firing at a Moggy at about 14 kilometers, I immediately switch back. I think at the end of this video I'm also going to show a quick clip of a game where I took on a OPG Musashi and used AP very effectively in that fight, just to show you how useful the AP is on the Worcester. One thing I've been working on personally lately is using more AP in my light cruisers, because I think it's probably something I underuse. My personal rule for using AP in light cruisers is for cruisers under 10 kilometers and flat broadside, I'll use AP. And for battleships, it's a fairly similar situation, but I'll aim a lot higher to try to hit upper belt armor or bow and stern sections where they have very thin armor. Light cruiser AP should basically never be able to penetrate battleship main belt. When fighting cruisers that are angled or at range, I personally always find HE preferable, because even if you're not at a range where you can penetrate their citadel, AP really loses its attractiveness versus light cruisers, because you're going to get a lot of overpens, and sometimes they're just going to angle enough to negate most of the damage. And so, yeah, you'll notice in the space of only about 5 minutes, I did close to 150,000 damage, I think. That's the benefit of having insane DPM and the ability to really pump out great damage when you're in a good situation like I was, where you had multiple stationary targets to farm. I do try to get a quick shot into that Emagi. I was kind of hoping to secure a Kraken, but it doesn't happen. Here are the post-game images. You'll notice I earned 700,000. This was with a premium account and the plus 20% credit flag. And I also nearly broke 3k basic speed. You'll notice that I did over 80,000 fire damage in that game. That just shows how effective the HE is in this ship. And so here's that quick clip that I promised, where I use AP against a broadside Musashi, just to showcase how effectively you can DPM down battleships. I start this clip at 55,000 damage, and that Musashi is basically at full health. I load AP now. First salvo was actually the best salvo with about 8,400. That one I think I aimed a little too high and it's bouncing off deck armor. But yeah, you can see how quickly it adds up. If you're able to do 4,000 damage every 3.5 seconds or so, no battleship can take that kind of DPM. And yeah, there we are. It's almost done. We're going to break just over 100,000, so that was about 55 or 50,000 damage roughly in a minute.